welcome to Talking Technophobia. Great Scott, I'm Professor Movies, and tonight we will be talking about Robert Zemeckis' trilogy of films, Back to the Future, Parts 1, 2, and 3. I thank you all for coming. I thank you for watching at home or on the internet or in your car while you're driving, which you shouldn't be doing. Unless you're driving your DeLorean on your way back from 2015, which technically is the past now. Everything in Back to the Future is the past. So let's jump right into it. Show of hands, who watched all three of the movies? Just so I know where we are with this. Okay, all right, fair. I appreciate your honesty, the rest of you. I reluctantly also watched all three of the movies. The first one was no problem. I enjoy coming back to it time and time again. It's one of those movies I could watch like endlessly. Yes. The second one I like because of how reminiscent of the first one it is. And then like we finished the second movie, and Mrs. Professor Movies asked me, she said, like, can we not watch the third? And I was like, okay. And like we got really close to today, and like 2 days ago I was like, I need to watch the third one. Like I can't not watch the third one. Because like I was hoping like something at the end I would see, it would remind me of something. But for those of you who just watched the first, or maybe the first two, that's okay. I am going to include clips from probably all three. I'm going to invite you to speak about all three if you want. And what some of the things we're going to talk about tonight, we're going to start with some ideas about technology. Maybe we're going to move into time travel. I have a conversation with a friend of mine often about whether or not time travel is possible. I do not think you can go backwards in time, but I mean, you guys can convince me. I think we can go forwards in time. I think, in fact, we are constantly going forwards in time. But we might get into that a little later. Talk about the mad scientist, revisit that. I've decided that maybe this is going to be my Professor Movies uniform moving forward. I kind of like this; it feels right. But we're gonna talk about mad scientists, specifically with Doc Brown, and think about how these ideas have changed since like Frankenstein, since what we saw in Godzilla or Independence Day, things like that. And then like we'll move into human ingenuity, because I think there's a lot of that in this movie. For everything that goes wrong, like our human characters can come up with a solution. And then I really want to talk about nostalgia, because this movie is not only a nostalgic film for us viewing it now, but it was a movie all about nostalgia. And with the second one, it's really like projecting and trying to create future nostalgia. And like the nostalgia cycle is this real thing that's worth like talking about if we can. This fact that like we long for the past. But ultimately, all in all, we're trying to talk about what these films are saying in terms of like what it's showing us about our own culture, either at the time when these films were produced or now, what it's saying about technology then or now, and ultimately like how it changed movies, right? Because Back to the Future changed movies. Okay. So with that said, this is me. This was the really sweet Doc Brown costume I ordered from Amazon at the beginning of December. And it says it's going to arrive Monday. In fact, it told me it was going to arrive by today when I checked it, and I went home and it wasn't there. So I'm going to, I don't know, make some kind of joke about time travel, but you didn't like it, so it's okay. But like, just imagine that, like, had I been able to time travel, I would be wearing that. Okay, so general information for all of us about the films. I'm going to focus primarily on the first one for some of this background stuff, but written and directed by Robert Zemeckis. I want to say this is his first directorial project, but I could be wrong with that. I don't know if Romancing the Stone he was the director of or not, or just the writer. But this is a film series that is produced by Spielberg, right? And it was very difficult to get studios interested in trying to sell the film at the time. First film comes out in '85, 4 years go by, and the next two parts are filmed together and released together. Part 2 comes out in '89, and Part 3 comes out in '90. The end of Part 2 has like a trailer for Part 3 at the end of the movie. And Part 3 starts with a previously on Back to the Future. Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd, who's Biff? Thomas F. Wilson, Leah Thompson. I did not include Crispin Glover for legal reasons, if you're familiar with that at all. Crispin Glover plays George McFly in the first movie and only the first movie. and there was a big legal dispute about them using his likeness for the other movies. And if you see the end of the third movie, you see a guy trying to look like Crispin Glover, and that's why he stays like in the background of the door at the end, and he's like, "Where are my glasses?" Because like it's not really Crispin Glover. Movie had a modest budget, went on to make a lot of money, and in terms of like its effect on our own culture, right? Back to the Future, these three movies produced a television show, like this animated series, theme park rides, and there is currently in production a musical version of this on Broadway's West End. So look forward to like in 2 years, like maybe it coming over the pond to us. But I'd be interested in seeing a Back to the Future musical. I can only imagine how ridiculous that would be, but I think good things about it. Big influence on skateboard culture. Not only hoverboards, right? But this comes out at the dawning of the skateboard like revolution culturally, and like does a lot for making it cool amongst the young kids, and ultimately really much about pop culture and has influenced pop culture as a result. The first movie, they really kind of like say good things about DeLoreans, and in the second movie, not so much. So I wonder if they had kept being positive about DeLoreans, if they could have maybe saved that car. But I don't know. Because I would say that's the only reason anyone remembers the DeLorean now. All right, so let's get started. With that said, let's take a look at the end of this series, because I really think it's the end of this series where they try to really like crystallize some kind of point with it all. And we'll talk about, hopefully at some point, how like some of the other movies kind of undo some of the messages from the first movie. They give Marty this arc about being a chicken in the second two movies that really isn't there in the first. But I like the message that comes in the end of the third. I'm not sure if it's earned, but here's the end of the movie. And for background extra points, I guess pay attention to Vern, because he does some weird stuff in the background. All right, so I'm going to play a clip. So I show you that because like it gives us this nice message about like our own like power in determining like the course of our lives, right? With that idea of like the future is whatever you make it. It gives you a view of where the technology ends up in this film franchise. I had the thought, and maybe we'll get into this when we talk about technology, right? But like I was like, oh man, is like this about alternative energy sources? Because the like DeLorean runs on plutonium, and then he gets the Mr. Fusion, and then like they build in the second one that transistor thing using the 1950 parts with tubes, and then by the third one like it's no gasoline, so we gotta find an alternate source, and they use steam. And this thing's flying by the end, so I don't know. Maybe on some level, right? You could look at the way the DeLorean's energy sources have changed, and maybe it's like making an argument for like being less dependent on gasoline, but this is literally a thought I had last night trying to fall asleep. With that said, like, yeah, no, you're right. That and on the toilet, best ideas happen. With that said, I have been informed that Talking Technophobia has gone international, and we have viewers from Italy, so hello, Stefan. Thanks for watching. With that said, so one of the things that I think is really important in Back to the Future in connection to technology is the past, right? The view and how we view it. So like, as technology increases and the future becomes more uncertain, there's a good chunk of people who are tempted to look back at the past, right? And often we look back at the past fondly. And there is something really dangerous about this kind of uninformed nostalgia, right? The selective memory of the past and how it was so much better than it is today. And like, if you make that mistake, right, it can have irreparable consequences like on the present and the future. So to me, right, Back to the Future is really a movie about, no, let's go back and see what it really was. Let's dispel all of the misconceptions that come with like that dangerous nostalgia, and let's try to learn something from it and make changes based on it. So really for me, right, it's the dangers in that idealized version of the past, and I think it's like in order to prepare for the future, people need to really come to terms with the realities of the past, right, and not just kind of remember it fondly with rose-colored glasses. So, with that said, let's look at some technology. And I think most of what I'm going to show you in terms of technology is coming from the second movie because of its predictive aspect of the technology. But feel free with our conversation to talk about like the technology of the 50s and how it changed when we get to the 80s, right? Like, or like the use of special effects in these movies, I think, is also something to really think about, because one of the things they said in the production of making these movies was like they tried to use every trick in the book. And there's a lot of effects that like Zemeckis isn't like even 100% happy with, but like it was production time and the best they could do. Okay, so this is a film that comes out at a time when CGI is in its infancy, right? Like there's a lot of different kinds of like technology being used in the production of the film, and yet the subject matter of the movie is in itself very much interested in like technology, where it's been and where it could be going. So like, we can talk about like technology in or outside the movie, things you see, things you notice, things that came true, things that haven't. I'll let you talk about hoverboards for 2 minutes, maybe. I know, I'm sorry that they're not more, you know, I'm sorry you don't have your hoverboard. But, so what are we thinking, right? What is this movie showing us in terms of technology? How's it using technology? What do you guys see?
Well, we'll see that not quite the video phone to that degree, but we kind of have that now.
Yeah, with
with Zoom video.
Yeah.
You can do like conference calls.
Yeah, Google Hangout is like that too. FaceTime. I feel like we're giving all these companies plugs right now.
Also,
that's okay. You're welcome.
There's a new TV that you can now face call on.
Really? Okay.
So yeah, it's like a new smart TV that they're trying to sell. You can face call on it.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, what do you think?
I do think in a few ways it's less actually predictive of the future and more just the 80s on steroids.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know, like, a lot of the technologies are just something from the 80s, but shinier.
Yeah. And like...
So like they missed a lot of the bigger revolutions like networking. It's still cellular, it's still a phone connection that you use to talk to people. It's still a fax.
Yeah, it's still the fax, and the fax is a good example.
Now you've got 3 of them in your house instead of 1 in the office.
Right, okay. Yeah, it's cool. And even if you think about like their wardrobe, it's just kind of like 80s on steroids. Like, yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I think the access to information was right on, even though we might not see it on the screen now.
Okay.
But you're able to find out anything about anybody.
Yeah, with like social media and stuff, right? Like the likes and like avid basketball fan and likes beer and this thing and that thing when Needles is on the screen. Like that's pretty much information that we have collected and like delivered to the rest of the world about ourselves. You know, if you think about your profiles and all of that. That's right. You can find out a lot about me on the internet, I'm sure. It got to the point where it's like, there's no point trying to make this stuff go away. So it's just like, you embrace it. It's like, yeah, that's me in a bow tie and a Chippendales outfit jumping out of a cake. I know. It was high school. They were weird times. Yeah, go ahead.
When was the microwave invented?
Microwave comes out in what, like the 50s? Who knows?
The original.
The original?
The radar range.
Yeah.
So when did it become popular? Because that reminds me of the whole idea of it.
Yeah.
It's like a microwave. Not so much a food hydrator, but a microwave where the mom or whoever would put the food in the microwave and then serve it to the family.
Yeah, it's that, like, things are just getting faster and faster in terms of like food preparation. It's a machine that's doing the cooking. I was thinking about that, and I was like, how is the microwave safe? And like, I'm sure it must be, right? But I'm just like, and then I was thinking like cell phones and everything. It's like all of these things are frequencies and energies going out, and like, I was like, that's got to, like, Bluetooth, doesn't it, like, go through you? Does it go around you? Like, how does that stuff work?
It's like the Force.
It's like the Force. It surrounds you. Yeah, no, and I just, like, again, and it was watching Back to the Future and thinking about microwaves with the food hydrator, where I'm like, how is this stuff good for any of us? But, well, maybe it isn't. Yeah, like... And then you're like, oh, everybody's got cancer. And it's like, well, maybe it's the things we're holding up against our heads or how we're cooking our food.
I mean, we're here for a good time, not a long time. So.
Oh, that's true. Make the most of what you got, because like you only get one go around.
We missed the good-looking corpse thing.
That's right. Burn out, not fade away.
And we also,
these are all uplifting messages.
We also now there's
Yeah.
hologram shows.
Yeah.
You know, with deceased singers.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Roy Orbison
Yes.
or the Maria Callas thing.
Mm-hmm. They had that Tupac hologram like 5 years ago. They're using that deep fake technology to put people's faces on. Like if this movie was made now, right, they wouldn't do the prosthetic makeup for the older characters. They would just digitally make them old. And like, yeah, there's a lot of that that's coming true.
I think Tarkin would have a couple words about this.
And they're saying that he would be fine with it, they think. And it opens up it opens up scary possibilities where it's like that you're selling your likeness.
No, it just creates special contracts now.
That too.
The lawyers
Okay.
haven't caught up yet.
Other thoughts with this?
There was an interesting part with the son with the glasses on, you know, just being completely removed from the familial gathering place, you know, and being in his own world, not there present with everyone.
Yeah, that's really good, right? And it reminds me of like when we think about like Google Glass. There was a couple years ago they were pushing that, and then everyone was banning Google Glass because it was like invasions of other people's privacy and stuff.
Now
You could be
they're trying to make,
recording.
like,
Yeah.
contacts.
Now they're trying to make like contacts. I'm sure. When I lived in New York City and I would ride the subway, I would think about like how these like the screens are just getting closer and closer to our face, right? You sit in the movie theater, and then if the screen came into your house, right? Now it's there in that room with you, and then it was on the computer in front of you, and then it was on your phone, right? And now it's Google Glass, and then even contacts. It's just like getting closer and closer. And I often think of like blinders on a horse when it gets that close to us.
Yep.
I'm just hearing the James Bond theme. I don't understand.
Da-da-da-da. Yeah, that'll be good. You'll only see what we want to see.
And then eventually it's going to be, instead of seeing stuff, it's just going to be inputted directly into our brain.
Right, yeah, you just like plug right in, it'll beam the show right into your brain, for good or bad, right? Who knows? That could be really appealing. Yeah.
I think that bringing the food is in the house is kind of where we're headed now.
Okay.
Because people have food delivered to their house.
Yeah.
And we never did that. We went out and we shopped for food, or you grew it in your backyard or whatever. But everything is contained in the house now. There's like almost no reason to go outside, and I think that's kind of a mirror of what's happening now.
Yeah.
You know, the mom's not in the kitchen cooking.
Mom's not even home. Yeah.
It's delivered. So.
No, that's true. Yeah, it's a Pizza Hut little like tinfoil thing that she heats up or hydrates. Also, think about how that house, if the power went out, becomes a inescapable like jail cell for you, right? There are no knobs on the doors. Like it's all technological, biometric interface. And like all you need is like that power grid to go down, and you can't get out now.
But then people don't know how to do anything either.
Right.
'Cause if you are not cooking or doing things for yourself, then when everything's gone, then what do you do?
That's right. Yeah. Right. Like the idea that like technology is making life easier for us by taking away a lot of that time-consuming tasks is great until you don't have that technology and now you don't know how to do it. Like everyone who's knows how to follow GPS on their phone but can't read a map, right? Like and navigate using the map without the computer actually drawing the line for you, like is like a frightening possibility if all of a sudden your GPS doesn't work, right? Or you're somewhere where there's no internet. Yeah, definitely. That could, God forbid, right? Like there's no internet where you are, but like then what do you do, right?
Well,
you can't stream your Netflix.
Doesn't that create a lot of stress?
I think so, yeah.
Because then if everything goes out, then you don't know what to do, or you can't problem solve because the technology is always solving problems for you.
That's true, and like the technology in this movie is not perfect by any means. It's very like glitchy and problematic, right? The DeLorean breaks like twice in each movie, I want to say, like at least. And it's about It's about them like needing to like troubleshoot whatever problem the car or vehicle has run into. You know, so it's very much about like people needing to adapt to like malfunctioning technology, damaged technology. Because in the third one, it's like, it needs gasoline, and the first gas station's not coming in for another 150 years. And it's like, oh no. Yeah, and like it's thinking about alternative solutions for that. Okay, anything else in terms of technology? Again, you don't have to just talk about that scene. You can talk about anything. You can talk about, like, this made me like DeLoreans. I really think Back to the Future is a car movie, like in the same way Fast and the Furious is a car movie. Like, on some level, this is a movie that gets, like, young people, but maybe not just young people, like, excited about cars. The DeLorean looks cool. It's very, like, sleek and 80s, and, like, it looks like an electric razor. It also looks like the razor cell phone they used to have.
The best phone, according to my dad.
Yeah, a new one's coming out. I saw a commercial for it. I'm sure I'll see another commercial because I just said it out loud. So I'm sure YouTube or something will play that for me.
Yeah.
Anything else in terms of technology?
That you need a scientist. Like, how would they have solved all these problems if one of them wasn't a scientist?
Yeah.
They would have been in trouble.
Yeah,
They
exactly.
wouldn't have been in trouble in the first place if it wasn't for the scientists.
Yeah, that's true.
And like there was a conscious decision to change the Doc Brown's character name from Professor Brown in earlier drafts to Doc Brown. And like I walk away from like the movie and also knowing that bit of knowledge and be like, is he a real scientist though? Like, or is he like in the sense that like he has like degrees? Like I don't know. Because I don't know if it's like Professor Emmett Brown, PhD, or he's like a dude who likes science, is interested in learning it, monkeys around with it, and like Doc is his nickname, like Danny Torrance, Doc is his nickname. Like, I'm not sure. I don't know what you guys think.
I think he watched some YouTube videos in the future and came back.
Yeah, okay, maybe. It's like the how-to kind of thing, yeah.
He's an engineer. He's an applied scientist.
Okay,
A
yeah.
tinkerer.
Okay, yeah, like a tinkerer, and like the movie opens with and it's in all three movies, right? He's got those three photographs of scientists, of tinkerers, of like jack of all trades, second time, in terms of science, right? He's got Einstein, he's got oh now I'm blanking on all the others. I know Einstein was the last name. Newton, Copernicus, and the guy who stole everything from everyone.
Yeah.
Edison.
Quentin Tarantino?
Yes. Yes. But he was either dressed as Benjamin Franklin or
I think Benjamin.
who's the guy with Tesla? Not Tesla. Yeah, with Tesla, the other guy.
Yeah.
The Edison. I think it's Edison. I think.
Yeah.
Edison.
Yeah. No. Yeah. But I think
Edison.
one of the photos is Edison. If it's not Edison, it's Ben Franklin. I don't know. Insert correct photo of things here. One day I'll edit this footage and that's a note to myself in the future.
The thing
Yes.
is, in all three movies, you have some sort of a Rube Goldberg type device.
Yeah.
Like in the first movie, he's got this whole thing to feed the dog.
Yeah.
And of course, the dog's not there, so you've got this huge pile of dog food on the floor.
Yeah, and the bowl, like Einstein's name on it.
Yeah.
And
in
that
the
automation.
And in the third movie, he's got that whole thing going, in the barn.
Yeah, to make what? Does anyone remember? It makes one ice cube.
Yeah.
Like it's this giant contraption, and Marty's like, it's a refrigerator.
Yep.
So and it produces like one ice cube, and he's like, iced tea?
Yep.
But yeah, like if you think about how, the first computers were like the size of this building, right? And like the technology just gets smaller and smaller, faster and faster, right? And like it's set up with that the ice maker, being gigantic. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot with it that I think is worth thinking about. I think it's also warning about like our overdependence on technology, kind of as we're saying. It's also giving like implications that like maybe it's headed in a wrong direction. Maybe we're sacrificing some of our own skills. Maybe it's making us less instead of allowing us to do more. Right? So that's something to keep in mind. All right, but flying cars, I think one day maybe. We've got electric cars now. That's like a step in that direction. No Mr. Fusions yet, or hydrators, but we're getting there.
Which is a pity, because it would really solve a lot of our waste problems.
Right, yeah, but perhaps it does kind of set up like the importance of recycling, right? Like being a statement being made in '85 versus like how much recycling has become a part of like society today.
Yeah.
Like with an eye towards that, like it's possible. Okay, all right. So let's talk about time travel. Yeah, I don't know. The whole I was like every scene with Doc and Marty is a scene about time travel, but so I tried to pull out a scene from the second one. Oh, and then I think I also show you the opening scene from the first one. I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, first one.
Yeah.
So I really like time travel because of how like puzzling and paradoxical it really is, right? Like there's lots of things, film, television, video games, right, and media that like fall into the genre of like time travel, and a lot of them aren't good because of how difficult it is to write a good story about time travel because of how like problematic time travel is. So my belief is that time, right, is a measurement, and it's largely like a man-made measurement, and minutes and seconds, these are things we've came up with, right? But time actually does exist because like our cells divide and all of that stuff, right? Like, you know, and you experience time maybe differently in your dreams, right? When you sleep, like you had that dream and it felt like you were weeks. It was going on for weeks and it was like 5 minutes, right? That kind of thing. Time might be a relative construct in that terms, but I really think time is a ray, meaning there's like a fixed starting point. It's a measurement of light, and rays extend in one direction infinitely. So I believe that you could remove yourself from a timeline, cryogenic freezing, Stargate, something, right? And go to the future, right? Because time is always going to be extending, right? But and there's always going to be more, right, down there. But I don't think you can go backwards. So convince me. Or not, but that's something I want to share with you just to give my own kind of like bias about time travel. I don't think backwards time travel works because of kind of what Doc Brown is bringing up in that scene with the whole tangent reality. Would there be two Docs and Martys in that world, that alternate 1985? Right? Is there a Marty in boarding school and a Doc in the asylum at the same time those guys are having that conversation, or did they replace them when they went back to that time? Right? These are questions I have when I think of it. So let's talk about time travel. Yeah.
So compared to like more modern, like dark and gritty time travel, it's almost like refreshing and like how irreverent it is about time travel. It doesn't care. It tells the story.
Yeah.
It doesn't ask like, why are you still holding this piece of paper if you never printed out of your fire? It just fades away. So
it just goes away. Yeah. Of course it went away. And Doc is really ultimately cavalier with the whole time travel stuff, right? Despite what he says, he's very quick to then be like, nah, never mind. We can't take her with us, Marty. All right, come with me, right? Like it's like he's.
It's not really a movie about time travel. It's a movie about how people interact when placed in different situations.
Oh no, I like that. That's good. Yeah. Other thoughts, or you want to agree or disagree? Yes, sir.
This is completely unrelated, but how does Marty's pants not catch on fire in the one right under the blue box?
Jeans were made, those are Janko jeans, so they were made of a really durable fiber. These are in fact Janko jeans, and you would not be able to set me on fire if you tried. Let's not try, but
okay.
The real answer is it's not really there with the fire. It's a computer generated effect, right? And you when you watch it on a big screen, you see that it's some green screening that's happening. But that's a good catch.
How awful.
That's a good catch with it.
I never know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed it watching it this time. Go ahead.
Me too.
Well, when you do the alternate timelines like that, you really are, unfortunately, have to understand that time and everything surrounding each of us is a perception.
Okay.
So it isn't that there are other timelines because I'm not in there to perceive it.
Sure.
So if I'm here, this is the boat I'm in.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And at that point, is there another boat? Yes, but I've got to go from this boat to that boat. So can you go backwards? Only until one that you've already perceived.
Okay. Okay.
We call that memory, but that's okay.
I think of it that way too. Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm gonna go out on a limb. So
Go out on that limb.
I don't believe there's time. I believe that's a human construct.
Okay.
Yeah.
To keep time. I also think that the past is usually present.
Okay.
Even in a philosophical way, because a lot of issues that we deal with seem to keep repeating and repeating and repeating.
Yeah.
So, what am I trying to say? So I know it's kind of sad, but we do age. That's a fact. But, you know, when we're not in this body, how do we know what happened? You know, we don't even know what death is, really, because we're not dead.
That's true.
So we don't even know what that is. So we consider this life part of, I mean, not part, the end of time for us. But we don't even know what this body, life, whatever we're doing here. We don't know if there's a beginning or end to any of it, because we don't know.
No,
So-
that's a good point.
So I don't know. I don't know what my point is with that, but this is my favorite movie.
Okay, well that's good. Someone, and I'm gonna do a bad job of remembering people's names tonight, but someone like articulated the idea that like if you could perceive time four-dimensionally, meaning like, because we see things in 3 dimensions, but if you could see things with that 4th dimension of time, like there would be a line of you, right? It would be like you 5 seconds ago, you a minute ago, you there, and like you 5 seconds from now, you a minute from now, and it would just be this like worm of you almost moving about the world.
Vonnegut did that.
What?
Vonnegut did that.
Okay, maybe that's where I'm getting it from. Because like a little bit I'm thinking of Interstellar, with that like the end of Interstellar and how he ends up behind the bookcase, and like it's all those moments of the daughter's life. A little bit I'm thinking of Donnie Darko, with that thing that comes out of them. But yeah, this idea of like time is like how we perceive it. And it's really a perspective-based thing and maybe not a universal construct. Which sounds better because it sounds like we can't break it if it's just an individual thing. It's much scarier if it's this like objective truth that can be broken, right? And I think that gets like a little dark there. Yes, sir?
Also, this is kind of related.
Kind of related is related enough.
It's like a story about how like there's this world that's in 2 dimensions and like everybody's like these different shapes. Like there's a square, and then one day this sphere from the 3rd dimension comes.
Okay.
And is like, look at me, and like it changes like the plane he's on so that the square sees him like what, like his bottom and then his middle and then his top, sort of. And then he takes the square and shows him everything in 3 dimensions, and so the square is like, whoa, now show me like the 4th dimension and the 5th dimension. And he's like, and the sphere is like, yeah, there's no such thing.
Okay.
But like if you had asked the square earlier if there was a 3rd dimension,
No such a thing.
then he would have said there was no such thing.
No, that's
So-
good. Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
it's allegory of the cave. It's Plato, right? Like
Yeah.
you think you understand things until you get outside of that cave and like can see the truth, right? And then it opens like the world was flat until it wasn't, right? The world was the center of the universe until it wasn't. Everybody knew these things to be true until we learned something else and we're able to look at the world differently. Okay.
That's the line from Men in Black, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
It's in that same scene where they're on the park bench.
Yeah.
And he's like, a person is smart, people are stupid.
Right.
Yeah.
And you know,
That line from Blazing Saddles,
which one?
the common clave. The
Oh yes,
sphere,
yes, yes.
You know, morons.
Well, maybe, and like nothing against those morons. I'm sure they're great. Yes.
You know, I was just thinking how the film is conscious about what they do and how it affects other people. But sometimes we don't even think about that in our regular life when we can affect some kind of change or what we do affects other people.
Yeah. Like if you step outside the metaphor of like time travel and stuff like that, and you just look at like the characterization and cause and effect, it is very much sending some kind of message about like what you do affects the people around you for good or for bad.
Like that one
Yeah.
in the beginning of the first movie when, the father is kind of wishy-washy and the mother is kind of let herself go. And at the end of that same movie, how they've got an entire, because he stood up for himself, they have an entirely different future.
Right. Because originally it's like a Florence Nightingale thing where she like loves him because she felt bad for him.
Yeah.
And in the revised timeline of the end of the first movie, it's that she respects him. She like, this is a dude who saved her. It's the opposite of what it was. And like, it makes all the difference. And we could talk about like how he gets to that point if you want, but yeah, it's important to keep in mind. Other thoughts, other ideas?
Well, I thought it was creepy about him and his mother.
Yeah, I got a picture of that coming up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
I
Yeah,
was
please.
I
It's
was
weird.
trying
It
to.
doesn't make it any more.
And it doesn't get less awkward the more I watch it.
Yeah.
know,
It
it's
just gets,
just-
the older you
makes
get when
you-
you watch it, the more you realize just.
That's true.
No.
And maybe that's the point. Disney did not want to distribute this movie because of that. Because they're like, there's too much soft incest. We don't want to go near it. Other studios were saying it wasn't like edgy enough, right? But like
Oh
that
my
Disney was
God.
like, yeah, no, let's.
little too
It was
radical
pre Game
for
of
our
Thrones. Game of Thrones made incest a lot more acceptable, and now that is on record. I'm glad you were all here with me for that. Good.
So this wasn't their idea of When You Wish Upon a Star.
Maybe. Like, I don't know. But yeah, it's awkward, that scene with young Lorraine. But also the idea that, like, Marty has that mention of, like, my mom never did any of this. My mom was like a nun. And then he goes back and sees her, and she's like a normal teenager, just like he's seeing in the 80s. And that, like, again, might tie in with the nostalgia stuff and how we want to idealize the past. But maybe.
Well, also there's a scene in the
Yeah.
beginning where, you know, she was upset that, you know, Jennifer was calling him.
Mhm.
You know, in my day, girls
Yeah.
never called boys. So this was the narrative she'd spun for her
Yeah.
kids. So
Yeah.
that's why he believed it.
Mm-hmm.
The
Whereas
reality
they're playing
was
grab
much
ass at
different.
the end of the movie.
Yeah.
Right? He's like grabbing her butt, you know.
Well, that was
Crispin
the
Glover.
father.
Yeah, the father. Yeah, no, not
Yeah,
Marty.
please,
He,
right, yeah.
he definitely was not into it.
I mean, you could tell he was creeped out from
Yeah.
the beginning just by looking at his face. He's like, "Well, hello, nope."
But Mom, you're so thin.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Well, I think children forget that their
Their
parents are
were-
human beings,
Mhm.
and they've gone through, you know, being brainless as a teenager
Mhm.
as well, and so sometimes they're trying to save you from yourself, and
Yeah.
so you have to create this persona.
Mhm.
You don't want to tell your kids you were hanging out at night.
Well,
You
sure.
know, why can't I?
Right,
know,
you were
used to
doing
do it.
this.
So
Yeah, I try to like, but I'm like, I tell my students, I'm like, you know, they want you to have a better life than they did. They don't want you to make the same mistakes as you were saying. I think the reality is sometimes though, like people need to learn the lessons that come from making those mistakes, and we can't necessarily like protect children from that thing. But that perspective, right, is important. It goes a long way. It totally changes how Marty views his parents by being able to go back and see what they were like. And I believe one of the starting places for like the idea of the script was like, the guy was like, would I be friends with my dad in high school, right? And like that was like
He
one of
found his
the
yearbook.
inception points, you know? All right, anything else about time travel? Yes?
one last thing.
You haven't, no one's convinced me we can go backwards, by the way. Go ahead.
There weren't too many black people.
Yeah.
Except for entertainer,
Yeah,
the guy at the counter,
uh-huh.
or
Who becomes the mayor in 85.
Yes.
But yes.
but he was the only one.
So, couple things, and maybe this will tie in with nostalgia, right? But it seems like Marty McFly steals rock and roll from black people. It seems
Oh my
like Marty
God.
McFly gives the guy who works in the diner the idea to run for mayor, right? So like
Would have done it anyway.
it's
but-
almost like a co-opting of culture happening in this movie.
It was a violation of the Prime Directive.
Yeah, it was kind of that, and like, cause like we're gonna look at Johnny B. Goode before this is over, but like, hey Chuck, you gotta hear this. Like this guy's got, and like that's Chuck Berry's song, and like Chuck Berry created that, and like the movie's like, no, he got the idea from this guy, who really, but then heard the Chuck Berry song and just went back in time and played it before Chuck Berry. So I don't know, it's problematic.
Trust me, that was not.
It's
that-
just a movie.
That was not. That scene wasn't lost on black
No, I'm
people,
sure it
Because I was
wasn't.
like, what?
Yeah. Because
What are you
like
talking about?
I find it like kind of like culturally like insulting, like along those lines, where it's like
Well, a lot of
all the things that like, not all the things, right, but a lot of these cultural achievements are kind of being like taken away by this white person a little bit.
But well,
Yeah.
That's
well, a lot of rock stars,
Uh-huh.
you know, they went to blues players and listened to them play
Yeah.
and learned the licks.
Mhm.
So it's not. It didn't happen that way.
Yeah, you got people like Chuck Berry, Professor Longhair. You got what's his face at whatever the guy who first was producing Elvis, who was like, if I can find a white guy who can sing like a black guy, I'll make $1 million. Whatever at Sun Records, I think it was.
Oh, I forgot his
Colonel
name.
Parker.
Yeah, yeah, Colonel Parker, and I can never remember his real name. That's what always trips me up. I'll look it up later. Google will tell me. But like it was that idea where it was like you had like it was race records right before it was rock and roll, right? And like it was like Eminem and black and like rap music, right? In the '90s, Vanilla Ice before him, like you see that happening with culture, right? You see that happening with music and those examples, and like it strikes me as that when I see that Johnny B. Goode scene, because yeah.
Now the only problem is this specifically for music. This was brought out at an Arlo Guthrie concert.
It's the folk process.
It's referred to as when Pete steals Arlo's music. It's the folk process.
Okay.
All right. So I mean, because Pete Seeger is, you know, I mean, obviously the folk god.
That's
so I mean, you know, so he's allowed the folk process. We can steal whatever you like, and the original writer gets to go. Royalties? Hello? Royalties?
And there's a lot of that in the music industry, right? It's happened like throughout the ages. People like stealing, sampling, you know, other people's work. It's more than just like we stand on the shoulders of giants, perhaps.
But that's what we call it, yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Otherwise, I remind you that one line from Amadeus. There are just too many notes, Mozart.
It's not standing on their shoulders, it's standing on their face.
Standing on their faces.
Nice,
I like that.
I like
That's
that.
good. I like that. That's good. An improvement has
From the
been made.
future.
Yes.
Right? There's hope. There's hope. Okay. I'm not convinced that you can travel back in time. So if anyone had that goal in their mind, you failed. But there's still hope that I will be convinced one day. All right, so
But that would be tomorrow.
Yes, please.
I think I'd be okay with time travel because I'm not a woman and I wouldn't be burned as a witch. Because women time travelers, pretty much most of history would burn them as a witch.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, you know, so I think I'd be okay. I would do like what Doc Brown did and I would just like open up a shop. But I think I'd like to do what Marty did, or wanted to do, or Biff really did, and like profit over my knowledge of the the future that's going to unfold. But I can't say I would really actually do that. Knowing me, I would step on a butterfly and change everything. All right, so let's think about Doc Brown as a mad scientist, because by the time we get to 1985 and this movie comes out, Hollywood is saying very different things about mad science. No longer are we making associations between like mad science and Nazis, right? We're not talking about eugenics. But there is a degree of concern that comes with like the idea of like science and scientists. And I really want you to think about like what this movie is saying, or these movies are saying, like science and scientists should be or need to be, right? Like when we think about like ethics and stuff. All right, so let's see it. You're gonna see the other half of that opening scene because I cut it with the clocks, and you're gonna see him talk about the DeLorean itself. All right, Doc Brown. I want you to think about what we're saying about scientists in terms of like positive and negative, right? Their strengths and their weaknesses. Because often science fiction movies, right? And I'll consider this a science fiction movie because of time travel stuff. But often science fiction movies like can be used to like criticize like current trends in science and things that are going on around the times that the film is being produced. Godzilla, there's a heavy criticism of like American like nuclear development and the research being used and the testing. So like, what do you think's going on here with Doc Brown? How has the idea of the mad scientist changed? Maybe you think that he's not a mad scientist. I had a very animated conversation with someone about how they believed he wasn't a mad scientist, and they were trying to defend that to me. So I don't know. What do you guys think about the science
Sort of
stuff?
mad scientist, but like not as stereotypical as the normal like mad scientist. Like I don't know, kind of, but like
So,
not for
alright.
like the same
Normal
goals.
Okay, let's then start with like what is the stereotypical mad scientist then? Let's like define our term, and then we can talk about how Doc Brown is different. What do we associate with the mad scientist in general?
Hyper-focused.
Hyper-focused, right? Okay, like so much so that they are not paying attention to other things in their life. Like
Yeah,
Dr. Frankenstein's
turning
got
off
a...
that little machine.
Yeah, like turning off the machine when he's not home, right? Absent-minded, right, almost. Okay. Dangerous in what regards?
Safety doesn't seem to be an issue.
Yeah, right. So they're not mad scientists often because of their own hubris. I just touched the microphone. Because of their own hubris, they often think they can do no wrong. They like Icarus, right? They fly too close to the sun, and usually there's potential for disaster.
More concerned about if they could and not if they should.
Yeah, right. Maybe you should have stopped to think about if you should. That's a Jurassic Park reference. I appreciate it. It brings us all the way back to where we were.
They're able to get illegal,
Plutonium.
illegal substances.
Yeah.
Like they skirt the law.
Mad scientists usually are operating outside the bounds of the conventional legal system, right? Whether you're digging up dead bodies or robbing power plants of their plutonium, there seems to be something there. Did you? Yeah.
Well, they're often outside the bounds of science as well, like science at the time and probably now is. Time machines aren't a straightforward thing to build into a car. Sometimes like a death laser from the moon is not a thing really you can build.
It's always fringe science or pseudo-science, perhaps. Yeah.
Dreamers.
Dreamers, right? Looking at things differently, wanting more, wanting to push the boundaries. So, this all sounds like Doc Brown to me, right? So what's different about him, or what makes him stand out amongst the huddled crowd of stereotypical mad scientists?
Well, so Doc Brown seems very concerned with the people around him. He's
Yeah, go ahead.
He's very much not a prime directive guy. At the end of the movie, he says, "It's your kids." So he goes off to save his friend's family. Even
What
though
are they,
he's,
grown up to be assholes or something?
Right.
Yeah.
That's my Michael J. Fox. Here, go ahead.
Oh,
Like, okay.
I think he's concerned to some degree with ethics, and I feel like some scientists, sometimes they get to a point like regular scientists, their developments are beyond, they're faster than the ethics can keep up.
Okay.
So I think that he is ethical to some degree, thinking about being concerned with, well, maybe not. Because he put the dog in the car.
There's a lot of animal testing, like, in these movies. I was thinking about The Fly for some reason watching this, the Goldblum version, and I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of animal testing in that. They gloat the gorilla's brother or whatever. He's like, I'm sorry, I killed your brother. And this, he tested on the dog. So there is some kind of like, we test these dangerous things on animals first.
We do
I
that.
think maybe he just felt that Einstein should prove Einstein wrong.
Oh. Notice that the food in the dog bowl looks like poop, and maybe he's pooping on Einstein's theories. I don't know if that's a subtle thing or not in the beginning. But it sure looks like poop. Yeah. It's not. Go ahead.
I believe if we take a look at the lower left-hand picture there,
Okay.
we can see that after you've been to the future and to the past, all you have to do is shave your head and you become Uncle Fester.
Oh man, it's,
Oh my god.
especially in part 3 when Doc Brown learns the redemptive power of love. I see a lot of Uncle Fester in part 3. It's like very much that like same awkward, I don't know how to act with women that he does in Addams Family.
Look at the eyebrows. It
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Which again, I think he's a great actor. I like those Addams Family movies a lot.
I think we think people are have mental issues
Uh-huh.
until they're proven correct.
Ooh, that's like almost word for word from Frankenstein, right? He's like, here we stand, 3 very much sane people, 1 crazy person. In a couple minutes, we'll see who's right. But go ahead.
But think about what we can do now. We can do transplants from people who are deceased,
Yeah.
and people live.
Yeah.
So now we're doing cloning.
Baby Yoda. Go ahead.
Cloning, stem cells.
Yeah.
All these things are controversial,
Right.
but
There's a lot of like ethics around these things. A
And-
lot of should we, even though we can.
and Einstein was controversial until he was
Someone more
proven correct.
controversial came along.
Yeah.
So something to notice about these figures is often they're the people who push the boundaries, the people who make the biggest in terms of like technological or ideological breakthroughs are often the people that the majority of society would point to and label as crazy and not want to listen to at all. right? Somebody who sees it, the prophet is never appreciated in their time, right? Someone who sees ahead, right, often has a hard time, like, in that place.
Well, it's scary to think outside the box.
Uh-huh.
Because it's not
dark out there,
the
yeah.
norm. So, you're also comparing the idyllic 50s, which all this other stuff was going on in the 50s.
Yeah.
But all they showed was the perfect little house, the wife, the car, the husband going off to work, and the perfect little kids.
Yeah.
But that's not.
Their Davy
That
Crockett hat.
there was more happening
Yeah, absolutely.
in the 50s than that.
Yeah, so even though we're being, it's not like how Marty thinks it's going to be. It's not how the mother explains it. We are still given a like idealized version of the past with what we see in the 50s. Right? Yes, there are bullies. Yes, they're violent. Yeah, everyone's very rapey. But also, right, there's a lot of other things, like Korean War is happening, right? And like there's race issues going on in the country that, like, not really a factor, right, in this movie, right? So this movie is only giving you a slice of that. Something I notice is that all of the families gather around the table for dinner in all of the timelines, but who's the other family member that's a part of all of their meals? It's the television. In all of the scenes with the family around the table, they are watching TV. And that really, those scenes are the most interesting to me because, like, I think I've spoke to the art project I'll never do but want to do, where I want to go into your house and put like a camera on top of your TV and just like randomly take a picture of all these different people all over the world, right? Like sitting, watching, looking at the camera, right? But they're really looking at the TV. I want to give people like that perspective because we only all experience the other perspective of looking at the screen. I want to show you what you look like when you look at the screen. That's my plan. If anyone wants to make it happen, contact me on the internet. We'll put it together. Yeah? It's already been done? Damn it. All right. Synchronicity. It's okay. I also invented an alarm clock pillow in my mind, only to find out that something like that exists already.
Aww.
It's okay. It's time travel, man.
And
Yeah.
how has that all affected people's lives?
Yeah.
Because, kids in the 50s and 60s played outside. That doesn't really happen, and everything's scheduled, and it's not like you ride down the street and, pick up your friend and you go ride your bike. It may be like that in some places,
Sure.
but not many.
And there could be families today that are like, we're at the dinner table, no TV, put your phones away. There definitely, I believe, are families out there. I think there's a lot more where like that distraction, that technological presence is there, if not more so. Like I've got students who like literally need something on in the background, and not even students, I know adults like this who like need that constant noise. Right? I'm working on a paper, but I'm listening to music and watching Hulu at the same time. Like, it's fine, like, and it's okay, and it's a skill to multitask, right? But, like, it worries me, like, how present that noise is becoming in our lives, right? The idea, like, you need something on in the background because there's something scary about the silence, maybe.
I think it's
Or maybe it's we don't have enough time, and we're trying to do a lot in the time we have. I'm trying to silver lining it. Yeah, what do you think?
I think people are, it's addictive.
Yeah.
So it's soothing.
Yeah.
So that if you practiced in some quiet, you would probably get used to it as a habit like anything else. But I think that, because I do it myself, when you have nothing to do, you think you should be flipping through your phone or your friends are texting you, whatever. It's become a soothing thing.
Yeah.
Kind of like a white noise generator.
Yeah, like that white noise. Don't get me wrong, like those frequency things, like sometimes I'll put that on the background just because like it's not the silence, and it's like but it's like it's weird, yeah.
Like the stuff like white noise, I'm fine with in the background, but I can't concentrate on like what I'm doing if there's like a YouTube video or something
Right.
like, in the background.
Yeah, like it's
Yeah.
difficult to really pay attention to different things at the same time, right? You can really, it seems like only put your attention in one
Yeah.
place at one moment.
Multitasking is just your brain quickly flipping back and forth between multiple tasks. You can't like actually focus on multiple things at the same time. It's just rapidly switching between them.
And I think we can see that with Doc Brown. This is me steering it back. I think we can see this laser sight focus with Doc Brown. I think we can also see like the addictive nature of technology with how like every solution is just like, all right, let's get in the time machine and go do this. Let's do this. Like more and more, and Doc is becoming more and more okay with like disregarding these like ethical principles that he at least verbally seems to like believe in, right? Don't interact with anyone, you'll mess things up. You know, we can't take his future wife, we can't take her, you know, it'll change everything. It's like, all right, I guess we're gonna have to take her with us. You know, like he does constant reversals,
I
yeah.
don't know if he's disregarding them so
Go
much,
ahead.
or is like updating his like internal priorities of like what is important. He eventually finds that the power of love is more important than the safety of the universe.
And in part one, that is like the popular song was "The Power of Love." So perhaps, right? Like maybe it's character growth, right? It's taking our stock character and making him a little more three-dimensional, right? Trying to round him out. Totally could be a possibility there. Yes.
He also is kind of frenetic and all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's about time too.
Yeah.
You know, his constant movement, he has to constantly be this. There's no time to figure any of this out. It has to be done now.
Okay.
And that's kind of how his character behaves.
Okay.
So I think that's a commentary about time. That's kind of how we are when we go to work.
Yeah.
You know, we have to be to work. We have to do this. So it's that frenetic
Okay.
energy.
Yeah, no, definitely, and you see that with the way Christopher Lloyd portrays like Doc Brown in terms of like his acting choices and stuff. Yeah, absolutely, the mannerisms, and like I'm reminded by that lower left gif where it's just like I know I looped it, but like I could actually see him like that just being the thing he did in the movie over and over again. Okay, he's like, don't talk to your past self, Marty. Make sure you don't run into you from the first movie. And then like he goes and has a conversation with him from the first movie. And I'm just like, you just told Marty not to do that. But again, like a lot of, they don't make eye contact. And like, again, first movie Doc Brown, too focused on what he's doing to even pay attention to who that man is.
I think the only reason he's okay with doing that is because he knows that he's not going to realize it because of how invested he
How
is.
focused he is.
Maybe, right? Like know
Yeah.
thyself, going back to the Matrix.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible. Okay. Anything else? So, scientists, in terms of like saying a message about like what we need scientists to be, is that what we're saying? We need our scientists to be focused and okay with like changing their ethics as it goes? Are we saying that we need our scientists to have some kind of like frenetic energy? Is this a good scientist? I know he invented time travel. Is he a good scientist? Is this what we want our scientists to be? Why or why not?
Hey, I have a lot of people, I work with a lot of people just like that guy in my previous
Are
job.
you saying that as a compliment? I'm not sure.
Well,
Is this a positive thing?
well, yeah, because
Okay.
you got to appreciate the eccentricity.
Okay.
And, it gave you energy.
Okay, yeah. So like, yeah, right. Like you could feed off of his energy. Maybe it affects those around him.
And remember, Doc Brown does make Bill Nye look calm.
He does make.
So I mean, just
Man, I would really like to see Doc Brown have like a public access show.
That would be great.
Somebody write that down. There's an idea there. There's an idea there. Remember? Oh, yeah. That's what that would be. Okay.
we should write this.
You want to be background?
Okay. Any other thoughts? Yes.
Professor, I can't tell which.
I think that when you're a scientist and you're trying to solve a problem, because isn't that what
Science
do?
is problem
They
solving.
try to solve a problem. So their goal is to solve the problem. It's the other stuff comes after the problem solved. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Sometimes solving one problem creates other
no-
problems.
yeah.
And we see that in this movie, but they are able to more or less fix all of the problems that they create. Marty's life is still very different by the end of part 3. He has no actual memory of his life in this timeline that exists, but I imagine it would be okay for him. He's got a nice car, his
Yeah.
parents are doing well,
Who cares?
mom's drinking problem has been fixed, dad is a successful writer.
And we can salvage all the parts of the DeLorean.
Yeah,
It's
and-
okay, there we are.
We're good. It's fine. We'll melt that down. Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Where did he get his money?
It's his family's money, I believe,
Oh, I could never
Um,
figure that out.
Although he
because
does
it's the
say-
Brown mansion, and they came over as the Von Brauns, and during the war they changed it to the Browns. Does anybody have any more insight to where the money comes from?
Well, he had family money.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Because in the beginning, he said it took me 30 years and my entire
Yes.
family fortune. Because you'll notice that one scene in the second movie, I think, or maybe it's the first movie, where he goes to Doc Brown's house and it's a
the
much
garage.
nicer house.
Oh
than-
yes, that's in the first movie when he goes
Yeah.
back to the 50s.
Yeah, it's a much nicer house than you see in the beginning of that
Yeah.
movie.
There is a newspaper clipping in the beginning that gives you like exposition that the mansion, that nice house, had burned down.
Yeah.
You also see that like the freeway came to town. There's like the freeway, and his garage is like out of place in the area that it's in.
Yep.
So you get the chance that he was like fighting progress. He was like fighting that stuff coming in. I don't know, maybe foul play was involved with the mansion burning down. Maybe it was his eccentricity.
Or maybe it was an experiment going on.
Maybe it was an experiment gone wrong, right? So there's a lot of inferences we can make based off of that stuff. All right, let's talk about human ingenuity. Yeah, we're doing good on time. Okay. So problem solving is really important in this film. I would say the movie is primarily about like humans' ability to fix the problems we create or even the ones we don't create. So I'm going to show you 2 examples of that, question mark? I don't remember.
In all 3 movies.
In my yes, and in my notes, I wrote something like it's about like if you're an asshole, you'll get shit on or something like that. And I was like, there's some message here with that because you're like these bullies like are constant, or Biff specifically, right? The manure joke comes up in all 3 movies.
You make your own shit.
Yeah, kind of, right? Yeah, you create that stuff. Yeah, there's definitely this idea about like standing up to bullies, right? That's something in all 3 of the movies. All right, so let's think about problem solving. So there's a lot of problem solving in these movies. I specifically pick those 3 scenes to show you right now because in each of those scenes, right, like technology is still involved in the human ingenuity, the problem solving, right? They're aided by the availability of other technology. But let's think about like what this movie could be saying in terms of like the power of an individual, right? Like especially when we're thinking about like the forces of destiny and time and all that. But like, what is it showing us about like ourselves? You know, like our own abilities. What do you think?
We create our own problems.
How so?
You wouldn't be getting into these issues if you didn't open Pandora's box from the get-go.
Okay.
So, you know, we're the reason why most of the science that we have currently exists or is being worked upon is because of the issues that we've created ourselves.
Oh, okay, that's interesting, right? Like a lot of like pollution, right? We develop technology, we create a lot of pollution. Now we're developing new technology to help like combat the problem of pollution and stuff like that. Okay, yeah, I could see that, especially since you think about Marty's situation in that last clip I showed you from the 3rd movie, right? Like he did create that problem, right? Because he can't back down from a challenge, right? Like he's in that situation, right? It's too late at this point to avoid it. So that's something to think about as well, right? Like a lot of, you made your bed, now lie in it, right? That kind of thing. Like you design your own like hell in a lot of ways. Okay. Other thoughts about it?
However, he also when you get to the end of the third movie, he doesn't take the dare and do the drag race. So he learned from the earlier experience. And because he didn't do that, he didn't hit the Rolls Royce that causes the problem
Right.
in the second movie.
So, all right, tangent, but let's go there for a second. Like, I feel like Marty's arc in the first movie means nothing in the second and third movies. His arc in the first movie is being afraid to try, right? Like with his band, but what if they don't laugh at me, or what if they don't think, right? Like, and he overcomes that by helping coach his father, because the father says the same thing. And in the second and third movie, all of a sudden it's the chicken thing, and Marty needing to learn to like back down, when in the first movie, which literally happens seconds before the second and third movie, like it's the opposite. So what do you guys think about that? Is it just me that I think that's weird? Do you think there's like a bigger point I'm missing with it? Or do you think they're connected?
Yeah. They thought it would be more interesting if he couldn't be cult like afraid, rather than.
Okay.
They thought it would be better story wise, to make the movie interesting.
Yeah, characters with inner conflicts and some kind of character arc, do make for better characters, absolutely. And that's why they try to give Doc a love life in the third movie, right? Because giving him another dimension makes him a more realistic person instead of just a cartoon. But what else do you think about it? Because I saw a couple hands. You think they're connected? You think it's we ran out of ideas for Marty? Could there have been an extension of that first thing that played out instead that might have been a better choice? I said it was unrelated, but this has been bothering me. Yeah.
I think that in the scene with the Coke bottle, I think he kind of saw some of the ingenuities that he had as better than the time he was in, and then he couldn't operate any other way unless someone there showed him how.
Right, because he's probably used to the twist off.
Yes,
right?
and then the person who lives in the time is just like you just put it in here and the cap comes off. So sometimes we think that technology is better, but it's not always better, because sometimes it creates its own problems.
Yeah, because consider this. One of the themes that seems to be running through not just these three movies, but a lot of the movies we've talked about, is often the problems are solved using older technology, right? Independence Day, they're able to communicate this worldwide strike using Morse code. In this, they put transistors and tubes on the DeLorean and ultimately end up with steam as the power source, which again is we're talking about something that's coming before gasoline and nuclear power and all this other stuff. So that's important to consider as well, that often this newer stuff is the stuff that's unreliable, and it's the older technology that's been tried and tested and perfected in a lot of ways. Can improve on perfection, maybe?
Well,
I don't know.
They had to use their brain.
Yeah.
They couldn't use a technology that was already created for them that would solve whatever problem they had. They had to use their brains to solve the problem that was in front of them.
Yeah, and that's that human ingenuity, and for as far as I'm concerned, that's what still separates us from the robots that are going to take over, right? The fact that we can think outside our programming. We can ad-lib and innovate and experiment, and they can't yet, right? And when they do, we should let them vote.
But
That's my advice.
But they do. But technology does seem intuitive, because once they get to know you, they can pretty much hand you what you think you need.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
Is it something about the answers sort of already exist within the realm that you're living in, and you don't have to go searching beyond?
Maybe.
Look at that as a character arc, or in so many films, somebody has to overcome something, but they do it not by an external resource, but internally.
Yeah, the answer was inside you all along,
The
right?
Wizard of Oz.
The Wizard of Oz, I was just thinking of it right there, right?
It's true, Tin Man. It's true.
You had the power all along. Yeah, perhaps. right? Like that the answers are right in front of us. The answers lie with ourselves. We're the only ones who are going to be able to fix the problems we create. It's not going to be something that we're going to find by looking back to the past or ahead to the future, right? It can be solved today and now if we just maybe change the way we look at things,
Matter of
perhaps.
perspective, to your point before about time being all perspective based.
Yeah, right? And like, I think that's really valid here, right? This idea of perspective, I think, is important. Okay, with the sake of time, because we got 11 minutes.
Yes.
Oh man, I guess I'll show you Johnny Be Good. All right, Johnny Be Good. We got to talk about nostalgia. I
love
got to
the
time.
shoes, though, really.
I got to time these better.
Right?
All right, here we go. I'm gonna show this clip in 3, 2, 1. So, things about nostalgia, and I'm gonna try not to shortchange this, but I'm also gonna think about how to better pace things in the future. Nostalgia is that like longing for the past, the idea that things were better back there, right? And like if you think about the time this movie's made, right? Culturally, there is a conversation that's asking to return to like former values and stuff like that. And you think about like where we are as a culture today, there is again that same kind of mindset where it's like things were better back then. We need to return to these good old days. And there's something very like problematic about that. And this movies in a lot of ways try to really show you the problems of nostalgia. And a lot of my big problem with like the third movie specifically is like the version of the Wild West they go to. Because you can say that the 50s we get is like a Hollywood version of the 1950s, a nostalgic version, but it's still got some issues and things to it, some grit to it. I really think the Wild West that we go back to in the third one is just like Hollywood's Wild West, right? Like as seen in the 50s. And I guess like maybe that's the point because Doc dresses him like that. But like that's my problem with the third movie and the Wild West that they show us because it's like too similar to the Wild West of Hollywood cinema in my mind. Whereas the 50s in this movie maybe was a little different from like 50s I'd seen in Hollywood. But I don't know. With that said, right, like, what is dangerous about nostalgia? What warnings about, like, being too invested in the way things used to be, right, could we see maybe in this film? And how could we maybe apply that to our own lives?
Well,
Yeah.
it comes down to perspective.
Sure, that's our word for the
Good old days were
night.
good for some people, but not for others.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
And they might have been good for you, but not for your neighbor.
sure, yeah. And that's important to consider, absolutely. Other thoughts with it? Yeah.
I don't know, there's something just wonderful about watching the shark sequence run again and again and seeing those Beanie and Cecil button eyes on the shark.
Yeah.
That really does it for me and brings me right back to the early 60s.
Okay, that tells me a lot.
None of it good.
But it's like, but think about even the example of that shark. The idea that like Jaws will still be important then, right? We're up to what, Jaws 19 by that point,
Yeah.
right? And like we do live in an age now where like you're not going to get like original intellectual property like financed in mainstream Hollywood. It's really difficult to sell something that isn't a pre-existing idea. Right, like because like we know that has been tested and will sell, and like again, like you look at a lot of remakes and soft reboots that come out that don't do well. Right, it's even like that's not true either. But
It's
like
one of the dangers of nostalgia.
yeah, right. That like well you've seen the Ghostbusters, so here's another Ghostbuster movie. You've seen
it's not.
right, right. Like you've seen. I don't know, you've seen Star Wars? Here's some more Star Wars, guys. It's a Star Wars.
But you've seen Casino Royale.
Right.
Twice.
Twice now. That's true. Once was on television, though, I
It's
think,
also
right?
like a money thing, because it's like,
Yeah.
well, like with Star Wars, it's like it has a huge fan base, and like you can probably put out as many stuff as you want, and you could get as much criticism, but it'll still make the same amount of money.
Which is very
'Cause
wise.
It's a huge franchise.
Because what nostalgia really is, ladies and gentlemen, is a commercial. Nostalgia is trying to sell you on a lie. And the Back to the Future trilogy are a bunch of commercials. Right? And like just look for the product placement and
Pepsi.
like it becomes
AT&T.
really clear. Pepsi,
PepsiCo.
AT&T, like it's everywhere. Like Back to the Future is in a lot of ways like Hollywood starting to commercialize their movies. A lot of this like sponsored content is being like put into all the scenes, and it's selling you a lie about the past. Even though the movie is like trying to show you the lies about the past. Yeah.
It's like most commercials.
Mm-hmm.
It takes you out of reality. So you don't have to deal with reality because you're living in nostalgia or you're living in some idea that you have about how society should be for you and not what society is for everyone. I think that's similar to what you said.
I like that. I think that's those are really good things to bring up, and like I like that I was able to like make the connection of like nostalgia and commercials because that wasn't like something I prepared. It's like as you're saying that, I'm like, oh wow, yeah, that's what this is. Like it's a bunch of commercials. So I mean, I haven't thought it through. I'll think it through more, but like I see it there. Final thoughts, yes.
And now you have branded. You not only have branded commercial items, you have branded people.
Yeah, yeah.
So they don't even have to be themselves. They can be a brand of themselves.
All the world's a stage, you know what I mean? We are all characters. Shakespeare's like this movie. Macbeth, but that's I'll get tangent. All right, final thoughts, anyone else? Well, because Macbeth is totally propaganda for King James I, right? It is, because it's a falsified history and everything else, but also Shakespeare in Macbeth is trying to draw your attention to the fact that this play is propaganda. So I think something similar is going on in Back to the Future. With it, like, it is very much poking fun at how this movie is being used to manipulate you. Maybe. Not the third one, though.
Yeah, because the product placement is, like, very in your face, where I feel like in other movies it's, like, softly in the background. Yeah. But, like, AT&T shows up on the screen, and it's like, hey, this is brought to you by AT&T, and there's, like, the big JCPenney in the back, and it's, like, so big in your face.
And there's no attempt to hide it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay. Anything else?
Nothing else to do with the movie either.
Nothing to do. Pizza Hut, JCPenney's, they have no bearing on it. You could have shot that scene anywhere.
You know, now I'm hearing everybody talk. That's the danger, and I think that's the place we're in.
Yeah.
Is because the corporations are directing policy and directing how we live in society and how we care for each other is directed by corporations.
Yeah. Yeah, like a lot of like our values, our morals as a culture, as a society, right? Like are projected to us just as much as they are, like in movies, they are reflected and we can see ourselves in these movies, right? These movies, TV shows, commercials, video games, like they put ideas out there too, right? And it's largely like big money, corporations with their own interests, right? Trying to sell a product who are now shaping those messages. Right, we're not talking about movies as like high art. We're talking about those commercials for the Super Bowl, right? Like that's like kind of what we're starting to see happen at this point in cinema by the mid '80s. All right, I like it. We're flashing the 30-second warning. There's my awkward photo of Marty and his mom. With that being said, it is donation season, and LMC is a non-for-profit organization, and I would like to encourage all of our viewers at home in Italy, India, France, wherever you're watching around the globe, right? Content like this, free thought and free speech could not exist without your own generosity. So while you are watching commercials and buying the latest smartphones, I'd like you to remember that, you know, this is a good time to donate to organizations who are, you know, supporting our own human ingenuity. So, you know, please visit LMC-TV.org and donate if you can. You guys donate twice. With that said, tentatively January 10th, which is the second Friday in January, I'll give you a holiday break. January 10th, let's continue this erosion of my happiness, and let's really think about how money and commercials are influencing us. And let's get mad as hell and not take it anymore. So next month we'll watch Network 1976. Hope to see you there. Thank you and good night.
But are we mad as hell?
I'm mad as hell, always. Clap for each other, right? Let's clap for each other. Thank you.